Hi everybody, my name is Kim Hargrave and I'm the Education Director here at the Denison Pequotsepos Nature Center. And I'm really excited today to be talking about hawks. And I have a broadwing hawk named Brody with me to help me out today. We have a bunch of different types of hawk species that live in Connecticut. We have forest hawks, we have hawks that you see over fields and meadows, and Brody is an example of a forest hawk right here. And this hawk right here is not an endangered species in the state. Their population numbers have actually increased over the last few decades. As our forests have returned to Connecticut, this hawk has been able to return to Connecticut. Now there's a lot of really special things about broadwing hawks. One of them is that broadwing hawks are migratory. So they actually spend their winters down in southern Florida, Central America, and the northern part of South America. So they travel long distances both in the fall and in the spring on their migration. And they are just returning to Connecticut right now. Usually about mid-April to mid-May is when these hawks actually return to the state. So if you think you've seen one recently, it's very possible it's probably a new returnee. So these hawks, when they migrate, they often migrate in what we call a kettle, which is a large group of hawks. So if you're in the Connecticut and Rhode Island area, sometimes it's fun in the fall to go out to a place like Napatry and you watch and all migrating during the day together. All right, now a few things about hawks. We've talked a lot about owls on some of our programs, but not a lot about hawks. One of the things that makes a hawk different than an owl, besides the fact they're awake during the day, is their talons and their toes. If you look at Brody's talons and toes, he doesn't like it when we get too close, but you're going to see they have no feathers on them. Owls have feathers all the way down their toes, and that helps to keep them extra quiet when they fly. Hawks don't have those extra feathers on their talons. Now they still catch their prey with those sharp claws that they have right down there, 3 in the front and 1 in the back. I'm going to just try to reach over here and grab this talon, and you can take a look at this. This is actually a talon from a shark-shin hawk, but it's similar to the broadwing hawk right here. And how he hunts with these talons is he actually sits in the tree and he watches for prey. And this guy likes to hunt for small mammals and occasionally birds, salamanders, snakes, lizards, anything that happens to start to wander around that is in his view, he'll try to take a swing at, and he'll actually leave the perch, swoop down, and try to catch it with his talons. After that, he'll use his beak to tear his prey and swallow it into little pieces. Now, broadwing hawks, I love this. There's most things. Sometimes they mate for life, and sometimes they don't. It just kind of depends on the relationship, I guess. And so sometimes they will have returning relationships every year with the same mate, and other times, you know, they switch mates from time to time. They do build their own nests, which also makes them different than a lot of owl species that don't want to have to be bothered to build their own nests, like we talked about. These guys will build their own nest. The female does the majority of the nest building, but the male will actually bring pieces to her to help build it. It takes about 2 weeks to build their nest. So once they return, they've got 2 weeks or so of nest building, and then about a month to sit on the eggs. And then the nestlings or the baby hawks are still in the nest for 4 to 5 weeks after that. So it's a long period of time that these hawks are with very young birds, and then those birds stay with their mom and dad until it's time to migrate, and then they all migrate independently back down to, you know, Central America and that area right there. So hawks have amazing eyesight, so he's hunting by sight, all right, and by their sense of hearing, but mostly by sight, so really, really dependent on being able to see their prey as it's scampering around on the forest floor. Sometimes when they hunt for birds, they will take advantage of a bird that's in a nest and try to get that one as well. Now I actually want to play the call of the broadwing hawk for you because like I said, these hawks are interior forest hawks, which means we don't see them soaring over the open meadows. We don't see them sitting on the light posts the way we see red-tailed hawks and red-shouldered hawks. These hawks tend to be buried in the forest, but if you're out for a hike, that's when you might actually hear them. So let's listen to this call. It's fairly distinctive. All right, so that loud call that you hear when you're hiking often can be the call of a broad-winged hawk. Again, you may not see it, but you'll hear it hiding out there. So a nice few other things is because they are forest hawks, they have shorter wingspans. So a red-tailed hawk, you see it soaring over the roadways, things like that. So they have very large wings to help them with soaring. These hawks have shorter wings, so they can actually navigate in between the trees. So they can fly in between all the different trees and not get all caught up in branches and things like that as they're soaring around.
And Kim, these are smaller hawks overall, correct?
Yes.
So we have a question from Emma who'd like to know what size they get to be.
And
Brody is full size, right?
Yes, Brody is absolutely full size. A red-tailed hawk is about twice the size of these broad-winged hawks right here. And so broad-winged hawks, usually in the wild, can live between 10 and 15 years. You know, there has been occasional ones that have been tagged that have lived upwards of 20 years. And in captivity, we look for about 15 years. Now, unfortunately, Brody was actually hit by a car about 5 years ago, and his wing was injured and wasn't able to...
I'm going to turn so people can see that lower, his right wing has a bit of a droop to it.
Yep. And so unfortunately, he cannot fly anymore, and that's why he lives with us at the Nature Center. And he'll have to spend the rest of his life here in captivity, and we're hoping, we don't know how old he was when he got hurt, but we're hoping that we're going to have him for a nice long time here at the Nature Center. And he is out in one of our flight enclosures, and so if you visit the Nature Center, you can walk by and you can actually take a look at Brody. He's a really interesting hawk to see up close, because like I said, we often don't see them, we just hear them out in the woods. When these guys lay their eggs, they usually only lay about 3 to 4 eggs per season. And so it's one of those things, again, where every bird does matter. And, because depending on what our rodent population is and things like that, will depend on how many of those birds actually make it to adulthood and then have to survive their migration. So, like I said, here in Connecticut, they're doing pretty well, but because of deforestation down in Central and South America, they're having a little more trouble with their wintering habitats than here in Connecticut.
And what causes these hawks to migrate versus our other hawk populations that spend year-round with us?
So one thing could be, and I don't know 100% for sure, but could be because they're an interior forest hawk, they're not used to being so much out in the open, and with our deciduous forests here and things like that, there's not as much cover for them for hunting purposes during the winter. So they go down to a tropical forest where they still have all the cover as they're hunting from perches and going down. That could be one reason. Maybe that they're smaller could be another reason as well.
Now, compared to our other hawks, because we said size-wise, he's about half the size of a red-tailed hawk. How much does he weigh?
How much do you weigh? Less than a pound.
Which is impressive when you think about the size that he is on your arm.
Yes.
I'm just going to zoom in a little bit because I know that Brody...
Brody doesn't like to move. He likes to just be perched. That's his thing. So if you think about it, that actually makes sense because that's what he does in the woods. He spends more time just perched, checking out, looking for food than, busy flying around searching for food the way other birds do.
Now, are there any things that might prey on broad-winged hawks because they are smaller?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's a bummer to be a small hawk because they will sometimes overlap territories close to red-shouldered hawks who might try to prey on them, being a bigger bird. At nighttime, if they're not paying attention, they can fall victim to great horned owls, things like that. So otherwise, other things they have to look out for is nest predators. So most likely the adults wouldn't get hurt, but the nestlings would. And those are from animals like fishers, even raccoons who can climb trees, things like that will actually go to the nest and try to get the eggs or the nestlings as well.
Gotcha. And again, we just had a question from Emma of why are they spending the winter in the Northeast? And I think she has it a little reversed. So these guys actually go down to, you said, South
Central
America?
And South America, yeah.
and then they come back, and so they're just starting to arrive right around now.
Yeah, so this is a good time of year to go look for them. And because they're setting up their territories, they are calling more. So you're more likely to actually hear them right now. And then you do hear them, if you go hiking in July, but a little bit less than as you hear them now.
All right, great. Now, Brody has been with us, as you said, about 5 years.
Yep.
And another great example, I always like to ask the question of how do we determine if a bird that is in our care becomes a program bird? Because there are several, like Frank and Wanda, or red-tailed hawks, that are able to be seen by the public, but would not be a classroom ambassador.
So it takes a little bit of while, and you can see that Brody is still getting used to being handled and things like that. And but they definitely have a different personality. Like when I walk into, when I walk into Brody's cage to feed him, he doesn't scamper away from me. He doesn't hiss at me. He just kind of checks me out, looks at seeing what's for dinner today, which usually is 4 mice. And that's about it. He doesn't try to run away from me or anything like that. And so even today, when I went in to go and to have him, told him it was work day, because when I'm just feeding him, I talk to him and tell him what the plan is for the day, and told him it was a work day. And he just kind of looked at me, and it's not a difficult job to walk over to him and get him on the glove and things like that. So, and that's one of the ways that you slowly have to work with the birds. And because Brody has not been out a lot recently, he's a little more nervous than usual, and that's so I can see with his beak open and things like that. And the more and more that we do this, and that he sees us just, that it's, a calm thing, he'll get more comfortable being in different rooms. But one thing we chose not to do today was to be in the big classroom with Rosie, our pigeon, flying around, because that would have agitated him a little bit. And he might have been like, dinner, or do I need to worry about this pigeon that probably weighs more than I do? And so I didn't want to do anything that would be distracting to him as we were doing our program this morning.
All right, great. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in today. This was part of our Celebrate Earth activities. We would like to thank our sponsors, Aquarion Water Company and Stone Ridge Retirement Living Community as well, for helping us bring this programming to you this week. We had some other plans originally, but obviously with social distancing, we want everyone to stay safe and stay home. So we are bringing our live updates to you. We will come back to you guys next Tuesday at 10 a.m. Again, we're going to be continuing with our Facebook Lives Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 10 a.m. But we'll have some other great programming coming out as well, along with some other Earth Day related tips, because in case anyone missed it, yesterday was the 50th anniversary of Earth Day. And while we think every day is Earth Day, it's especially important this week. So everyone, thanks for joining in, and we look forward to seeing you soon.